Sir, I have a doubt regarding the assignment, sir. When you
Yes.
told to make a circular mask, did you intend that the circular mask is at the center of the image, or
It could be anywhere, I don't care, but yeah, you could put it at the center. In optics, generally, the aperture is on axis, okay, so you can put it at the center.
and sir, how will we use the mesh grid when the like when the array is not like uh, I don't know what the word symmetric, like if
Oh,
it's like
so
twice.
mesh grid can take two vector arguments. Okay, so if it is suppose 100 by 200,
Yeah.
then the first argument I can give say minus 50 to 49, and the second argument I can give as say minus 100 to 99 or something like that. So it will take the first dimension as say x and the second dimension as y. Meaning, if your image is not square, then you can provide two vectors in that. Okay.
Okay.
Sir, hello.
Yes.
Sir, I wanted to make a clarification. In the assignment, can we resize the image according to what we want?
You can do it. I don't care. Yeah.
Okay.
So are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to start with some question I got in the email. I think two people have raised questions of this sort. They are both essentially same, but I'm showing one of them. So the idea is there is a picture on the left hand side and there is a aperture on that. And this is actually taken as a phase image. Okay, so this picture is raised in the exponential after scaling. Okay, and then there is an action of FFT2 and IFFT2 one after the other, meaning this is not what I've asked in the assignment, but the student has actually done FFT2, IFFT2, and you would generally expect that the result is same, isn't it? But when you look at the phase, you get, so in the left hand side is the phase of the initial image, but the right hand side is the phase of the image after applying FFT and IFFT in sequence. Okay, so first you take FFT, then you take IFFT. And I think it's a legitimate question that why there is this junk in the outside part in phase. Can anybody answer? Does anybody have an idea why this is happening? You can try yourself. You take a picture, you take FFT of that, and then take IFFT of that. So I would say that what is happening here is, yeah.
They need to add
Somebody
one
wants to
IFFT shift or FFT shift in between that IFFT2 and FFT2.
Yeah, meaning that is preferable, but here, it's not going to make much difference. If you see IFFT shift and FFT shift is only doing rearrangement of pixels, it is not going to do much different. From the way it is applied here, it is not going to make much difference. You could actually add IFFT shift and FFT shift and those things in between, but I think the result will be probably similar. So you forget about FFT shift, IFFT shift. You can just take FFT2 and then take IFFT2 of the same result, and you will see that the phase of the result is slightly different. Okay. Now this happens because when you so anybody who has any idea, or else I will tell the answer. If not, then here is the answer. So see, when you apply FFT2 and IFFT2 in computer, what you will see is that in the region outside this mask, there is supposed to be zeros, but it will have very, very small complex numbers there. Okay, so their magnitude may be very small, meaning all other numbers in your image may be in whatever range, but comparatively the magnitude of these numbers outside will be very small. But since they are small complex numbers, to it's like double precision computation, so it's not going to meaning zero out things really. So even if there are small complex numbers, there will be some real part and some imaginary part. And so as a result, when you display the angle, you will see that there is something there. So one way, if you try to just display angle dot star the aperture, then you will see that there is not much difference. And so if you are still not convinced, then you can try to plot the real part and imaginary part of these variables separately. Again, you will see that real part, imaginary part will look very, very similar in these two cases. But what happens is, even if there are values that are say 10 raised to minus 10 or 10 raised to minus 15 or something like that, when you look at the angle, there may be some angle because there is some real part, some imaginary part, both are small. And so there will be some value for the angle, which may not be very small. But this is the main reason. Okay. Is that clear?
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm not clear with the that small complex numbers outside the aperture.
Oh, meaning, the result, if you take the result of FFT2, IFFT2 on any picture, the two, the initial picture and the picture after applying FFT2, IFFT2 in sequence, they will differ by very small numbers, meaning double precision or something. Now, outside this circle, there were all zeros, so
yes.
There those small numbers are no longer small. And so, suppose I have numbers like 100 inside. If I add 10 raised to minus 15, nothing happens. But if I have 0 and then I add number, however small they are, when you take the A tan function, you divide the imaginary part by real part, those numbers are still something and they give rise to some angle. Okay. So in such situations, you might want to, if you display angle dot star the aperture, then you will see that the two pictures are in about the same range. Or secondly, if you are still not convinced, instead of looking at angle, please look at real part and imaginary parts of the two functions separately. Again, you will notice that in the display, they look almost same, but there will be small numbers in the outside the aperture. But this is anyways an artifact of the numerical computation, that your computation is never exact. But when you do these exponentials and matrix multiplications, there is some precision always. And so there will be some error because of that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So we will move to our denoising problem. So I received two questions of this nature. The second question is also essentially the same, so I will not discuss it, but the answer to both of them is essentially same. So we were discussing this part where we wanted to take the denoising problem, where we have G out as the noisy image, and so we wanted to do this problem that A hat is an identity operator, and so this has become just a denoising problem. And so G out will be the noisy image that is given to you, and G in is the image that you want to estimate. And I was discussing this idea that we have a trade-off here, that we are going to find a G in which is close to G out, but not exactly same as G out, because we want to have a trade-off with the TV functional. And so if you want to compute, so if you want to do this, you have the image from a telescope, for example, of moon's surface, and then you want to remove the noise. And as I already showed you, that if you just average over some pixel blocks, then that is going to reduce, meaning that is going to get rid of a lot of details in the image. So we wanted to do something smarter, and so we are going to try to do the denoising problem or noise removal problem with a TV penalty, for example. And so we want to minimize C of G is G noisy minus G error squared plus alpha times TV of G. And then we are looking for a solution which is close to the noisy image, but will simultaneously have a low value of TV. And this is a bit of repetition. I covered this last time, but let us go over it again. So if I set alpha equal to 0, then the solution which minimizes this cost function is going to be the noisy image itself, because in that case the cost function is just the error function. And if you set G equal to G noisy, then the error will be minimum and it will be 0. Okay, but the noisy image is something that we don't want. We want to remove the noise. And so we are going to put a trade-off. We are going to say that I'm allowed to have some error, but meaning I'm going to put TV penalty on the result, and the cost of that is that I'm going to suffer a little bit in terms of error. And we will talk about today, how much I can suffer in terms of error. But right now, you just assume that I can suffer some in terms of the error, but I'm going to gain by having minimal TV on the solution. Okay. And as we see, the functional gradient here will be minus 2 times G noisy minus G minus alpha times divergence expression. Okay, and this expression you can get out of this previous expression we have obtained for nabla G in del G in, where A hat, if you treat as a identity operator, then you will get this expression. Okay. And so the algorithm we want to run is gk plus 1 equal to gk minus tau times the gradient C evaluated at g of k. And so you see that all these operations to find gradient C g, they are all algebraic operations, because g noise Z minus G is just a difference of two matrices, pixel by pixel. And the gradient operation is essentially, as I told you, row or column differences. And so everything that is there is only algebraic operations. Okay. Now we have two questions. Number one is there are two constants that I have introduced. One is this tau, which is the step size, and second is the constant alpha. Okay, so we will go one by one. First, we will discuss how to select tau in every iteration. You will see that tau can be different in different iterations, so we need to have a procedure to find tau. And then alpha, we will have a slightly more discussion beyond this point. Okay, so how do you select the step size tau? And there is a method for this which is called as line search or backtracking line search. Okay. See, what is our goal in running this algorithm? Can you tell me what is our goal when we go from, say, GK? So let's look at equation 62. I'm going from GK to GK plus 1. What is my goal in going from G, to the next iterate? Why am I updating this solution?
Sir, I think to reduce the total variation.
To reduce the total cost function. The cost function has two terms. So I want to reduce the cost function error plus alpha times TV. Okay. So I want to make sure that I take a step size tau such that I make sure that the cost function is truly reducing, okay? Because I know that this is a direction in which the cost function will reduce, but if I go too far, then I'm not sure if it will really reduce or it will go higher again. So suppose you are traveling, you think about a parabola which has a peak at the bottom, and you are on one arm of this parabola, like a harmonic oscillator potential or something like that, and you want to approach the minimum, but you can travel up to the minimum, but you can also travel beyond, and the parabola will then increase again, the quadratic potential, if you think about it. So if you are thinking about a curve, which is a cost function, and I know that from where I am, there is a minimum, but if I go too far, then I can pass the minimum, and I can go too far, and my minimum will actually not be attained, but I will cross the minimum and go ahead, okay? So to make sure that you are actually reducing the cost function, there is this process of line search that we will follow, okay? So the first thing is, you can take some nominal value for tau, which is say tau equal to 1, okay? And what we can do is, so you want to do the gradient computation only once, but at Gn, but I can compute a guess image, which is say G trie, okay? So G trie is Gn minus tau times the gradient that is evaluated at Gn, okay? And at this new image G trie, I'm going to evaluate the cost function again, okay? So for this G trie, I will again evaluate this equation 63. This is G noisy minus G squared plus alpha TVG, okay? If I find that the cost function value has indeed decreased, so if C of G trie is less than C of Gn, then I can say that my next guess solution is actually Gn plus 1 is equal to G trie, okay? But if I find that, meaning this is not true, that C of G trie is actually more than C of Gn, then maybe what has happened is I have traveled too far, and I can reduce tau by some simple route. For example, I can say that tau is now instead of 1, I'm going to do 1 by 2, okay? And then I can repeat this process again, the whole process again. So now I will have a new tau, and with that I will calculate a G trie, and then I will evaluate C of G trie and check whether C of G trie is less than C of Gn. If it is true, then my next guess is the G trie. If again it is this condition is not met, then I will again reduce tau by the same route, okay? So you can write this in a loop where you can reduce the steps, you can keep reducing the step size, and you can find a right step size where the solution is actually the new solution G trie actually is such that the cost function at that G trie is less than cost function at Gn, okay? And you can actually say that if my tau times this gradient goes, see what you're doing is you are actually reducing, if you look at it, then G trie minus Gn is actually tau times the gradient evaluated at Gn. And so you can say that if I can calculate the norm of this quantity, tau times gradient C evaluated at Gn, and say if it goes below some threshold, for example, if it is say 10 raised to minus 6 times the norm of the solution itself, current solution, then what you are doing is actually your change in the solution is really nothing practically. And then you can say that I have practically found a minimum, as the new updates are not making much change to the solution. So this both the things are important, the step size as well as the gradient itself. But if you find that you reach such a point where the step size you need or to make any difference in the cost function has this property that the change in the solution because of your step size and because of the gradient, both of them change the solution by some threshold, below some threshold, then you can essentially practically say that you have converged and you can stop your iteration. Okay. Is this clear to everybody what I am doing?
Yes.
So it is a very simple procedure that you start with something nominal. You can check whether the cost function has actually reduced. If it has not reduced, then it means that you have gone too far from the point, and then you keep reducing your step size. And when you find the step size where the cost function is indeed reducing, then you use that gtry as your next guess. And so at this next guess, you can again compute the gradient and repeat this process. And then from gn plus 1, you can get gn plus 2 and so on. And you can decide a stopping criterion. And if the stopping criterion is met, then you can stop your iteration. Okay. There is a slightly more advanced concept, which I will not discuss in this class. There is a idea of what is known as Wolff conditions. And there are two Wolff conditions, but I'm not going to discuss that. If in the beginning of class, I had told this book on complex, on convex optimization by Nocedal and Wright. This book is easily available online. You can download it, and there is a discussion on, I can put a chapter out of this book in Moodle, but basically there is this other sequence for this line search. So what you do is you don't just check for gtry less than C of gn, but you try to say that, you check for a condition which is C of gn minus C1 tau norm of this quantity squared, for some constant C1 that is in 0, 1. This Armijo search is also called as the first Wolff condition. And so what we are looking for here is if I replace C of g by C of g gtry, then I can do a Taylor expansion. And so what I want is that, if I went in this direction, so suppose I went to gtry and I put gtry inside C, then what will happen is I can do a Taylor expansion of C of gtry around C of gn, and then that will give me this second term. And so what I want is that if I just did a first order Taylor expansion, I will reduce the cost function linearly by some quantity. And I want that, the change that would occur now because of my tau should be at least as much as some fixed fraction C1 of the change that is going to happen due to linear, first order Taylor expansion. So this concept is right now, it is not really required for you initially when you are trying. The basic line search should be sufficient. But if you get more advanced into optimization problems, then maybe at some point I will ask you to implement this Armijo line search. It helps sometimes, meaning practically it can help you to make sure that your step size is not too small and step size is not too large. But we will not discuss this point too much in this class right now.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, what you said, like we are kind of seeking a minima of sort, right? Here.
Yes.
So what effectively is deciding this minima? Like, is it the gtry we are using or some other factor or variety of factors?
So number one is that, the minima is decided by, whether the functional gradient has become small. Okay. And the second thing is, the step size I need, so if I have the functional gradient and what step size I need to actually minimize my function from that point onwards. Okay. And so both of these things to some extent decide this as a product. So the change in the solution in one iteration is going to be step size times this functional gradient. But you see that if the functional gradient is really small, then correspondingly the step size that I need is also going to be small. Because if I'm kind of, you think about a parabolic surface or something like that, and you are near the minimum, for example. Now, the functional gradient itself is small in magnitude, but if you go too far in the direction that is going towards the minimum, then also the problem is that you might pass the minimum. So if you just want to put this condition that C of G tri is less than C of G, then automatically tau will also be small when the gradient G is also small. Okay, so both of these things somehow decide, but the way we want to look at it as a stopping criterion is look at how much is the change in the solution when you subtract this tau times gradient. Okay, and only when the product is actually less than something like a small quantity, meaning I have just taken an example here that say 10 raised to minus 6 times norm of the current solution. So you want to look at it in terms of how much is the change relative to what is my current solution, and based on that you can say that I'm close to the minimum of the solution, and making more updating steps is essentially not going to change practically what my image result is. Okay, so that is the idea. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. So so it has to do with both the G tri and with respect to G tri, how our gradients are being calculated.
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
But the gradient here is calculated with respect to the previous guess, so it is calculated with respect to Gn. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And so I'm finding a G tri where the cost function has actually reduced, and then I see practically if the change in the solution. So if I have found a place where C of G tri is actually less than C of Gn, and then I can see how much is the difference that is there because of this updating step. So the norm of the difference is actually tau. So it's norm of this tau times the gradient. And if that norm goes below some threshold times norm of the current solution, then I would say that, okay, practically I don't have to iterate more. Okay.
So is this like the PI algorithm where we are only using the proportional minimization thing?
Which algorithm?
I mean, PI algorithm,
What is
PID.
PI?
In that we only consider proportional. So this would correspond to that method, right? Where we're trying to minimize with respect to the first difference, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what is PI algorithm.
PID, I mean proportional integral differential.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so meaning you are going to look at it, you have to stop somewhere practically, and this is the typical criterion people use to see if their solution is getting updated. Well, we will have examples in this class where sometimes there are stagnation problems. So when we will study phase retrieval and problems like that, where data is not really complete, you can have solutions where things stagnate. But again, you will see that in those cases, choosing the right constraints allow you to move out of such minimum. Okay. So, but that discussion we will do whenever it is time for that. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So, when you put this together, this is the result I get, and so I'm still yet to discuss the issue of selection of alpha, but at least already you can see this result I showed you last time at the end of the class, but I'm showing it again, that you have a noisy image. If you just try to average over blocks to get rid of noise, it appears that noise has gone away, but it has also taken some structures away. Whereas if you apply your TV-based optimization, now you have an image that is that looks much better, and in the sense that the noise has gone, but the structures have not really blurred out. The structures are still there. Okay, and maybe within next 1 or 2 weeks, I will also give you an exercise to implement this, because we are still kind of working with the early part of what we studied in the course. But I think this, meaning you look at it, meaning this is going to be the iteration that for any image, you are going to just take any other random guess, as an initial guess for the denoised image. You can take, for example, for G, you can just take any random matrix, random valued matrix, and you just implement this in computer, and you are going to end up with the optimization image. But what I'm showing you here is, it is, so if I had a telescope and camera, for example, I'm going to get the noisy image because the light levels are low, and within the exposure time, I may not get enough light. But the imaging hardware plus your code that I just discussed, TV minimization with optimization, is already meaning a simplest computational imaging system. Okay, and that gives you improved imaging performance. Okay, so the point is that if I have this and if I can get this, then I can say that my system is the telescope, camera, and the algorithm. And instead of living with this image, now I can get this image. And so I can say that my system overall is probably better from what I want to do with these images. So suppose I want to do something with these images, so if I want to find edges, if I want to make some conclusions out of it, then maybe this image is far better than having this image, the original image. And so this may sound just like some image processing, but there is much more to it, so meaning for any application that you are dealing with, having this optimization based image will be much nicer. So for any image processing downstream that uses this hardware alone, or this hardware plus a meaning this camera, telescope plus your algorithm, you are going to have you are going to make a difference to the application that you are going to employ this for. Okay. Now it's also possible, I'll give you an exercise when you implement this, that you can just take a picture with your cell phone when it is a little bit less light. So you can take it outdoors in the evening or something like that, and you will see that the image is grainy, and then you can just apply this method that I just discussed, and you will be in a position to get a better looking image. Okay. Now, I hate to say this, but mostly your cell phones are already doing a lot of processing before they show you some image today. Some of it is a little bit funny, meaning they are also trying to apply some, some processing to change the image in a way that is sometimes can be not the correct representation of what you are imaging. So, at the time of a lunar eclipse, for example, I tried to image, take a picture of moon with a few different cell phone cameras, and I found that actually some of them actually tried to complete the circle, although the eclipse, meaning the part of the moon was supposed to be occluded, but some cameras actually, so be aware of what you are imaging and what you are getting out as an image. Okay. But if you are aware, then you can do something. If you are not aware, then you will believe whatever is the output. Okay. So the next question I want to discuss is, we selected the step size in every iteration, but there is also an issue of selecting the number alpha. Okay. So you can see that if you run this algorithm, then the solution is also going to depend on what you choose as alpha. Okay. Do you agree with me? Because for every different alpha, it's a different problem that you are trying to solve. And so the minimum of the problem will actually depend on what alpha you have. Okay. I'm going to show you, meaning what is the result when I try to run this with 3 different alpha values. Okay. So the first is a noisy image. Then we have 3 different cases where I have alpha equal to 1, alpha equal to 25, alpha equal to 100. Okay. And you can see how the choice of alpha actually affects what is your solution to the optimization problem. Okay. Notice, however, that meaning the major features are still preserved, but you know, the alpha equal to 100 image is it looks very artificial. The alpha equal to 25 is the image that I showed you before, and alpha equal to 1 image as a solution. It still has some noise. It is less little bit, but so there is also the numbers for error that I'm showing you. So the error here is relative error, and so it is G noisy minus G alpha divided by the norm of G noisy. Okay, and so in the first case where alpha equal to 1, the error is very small. It is only 4% with respect to the noisy image, and but you know, it still has some noise. Alpha equal to 25, the error was about 18%, and alpha equal to 100, the error was much more, and the image also started looking a little more artificial. But how do I choose what is the right alpha? So first of all, meaning you will have to know something little more physically about the system to know what is the noise. So the idea is that I'm going to select an alpha such that the error performance is about the same as you know, whatever is my detector or system noise. So if I get a solution for a particular alpha for which the error between my noisy image and the G alpha as a solution, if it is within the noise of my detection process or other noises in the physical problem, then I will say that that value is probably appropriate, because I don't want to see the smaller values of alpha. What they are doing is they are trying to fit the noise, and so that is not what I like. And the larger values of alpha, like alpha equal to 100 here, they are actually you know, trying to over smooth my solution, because now the TV term has much larger weight in my cost function, and so it is going to create somewhat artificial looking image. Okay. Now, if you don't know about the hardware of your meaning hardware specifications and things like that, you can also do something simple. What I have shown here is in the noisy image, there is a red line. So I can say that, you know, in this region, typically maybe the image looks like it is going to flat. It is going to be flat. So I can look at the pixel values P and subtract, say, the mean of all those pixel values. So this P minus mean of P is going to be the noise, because I know that in this region, the image is probably kind of flat. And so P minus mean P is an estimate of the noise. And so in this case, for example, if I take the red line and you know, pixels along that red line, then the estimate of noise P minus you know, mean of P along these along the pixels for these pixels along the red line, then I see that the relative noise norm. So the noise estimate here will be just P minus average P, and I can look at what is the norm of noise in along this for these pixels, and I can divide by the norm of the image values for these pixels. Okay, and so here I see that this ratio for this noise norm is about 21%, which I can say is maybe close to the alpha equal to 25 performance. And so if it is close, then I can safely take that alpha as my the choice of alpha. Okay, so the point is that if my image is much more noisy, then I will typically need a larger value of alpha. to make sure that my error performance is similar to the noise norm performance. Okay, is this clear to everybody?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, how are we identifying that this particular image has noise and this alpha 25 is less noisy
No,
from
no,
the picture, sir?
no, no. So what I'm saying is that you want to choose a alpha parameter such that, see, I know by looking at the image that it is noisy, but so meaning one way I said is you know the system specifications physically and you can estimate the noise from there. But the second, in this case, for example, I just took this picture from somewhere and I don't really have a knowledge about what camera was used and things like that. So what I did simply was, I took a reasonably flat region in the image and I just looked at what are the fluctuations in that region. So I just took a line in the image, small line segment of pixels, and I just calculated the pixel values minus average pixel values along this line. And then I said that, since the image looks like it is going to be flat in that region, nearly constant. So I'm going to actually assume that P minus average P is like my noise. And so I can calculate the relative noise norm. So norm of this P minus average P divided by norm of say the P itself along these pixels. And if my the noise norm in this case came out to be about 21%. And then I'm going to look at different values of alpha. So different values of alpha will give me different solutions. And I can look at what is the error performance relative to the noisy image. And if my error performance there is same as meaning the noise performance, so this 21% and 18% is kind of close. And so that alpha, or alpha close to 25 at least is going to give me a reasonable denoised image. If I go much smaller than that, you see that the noise is still retained. If I go much larger than that, you see that there is artificial smoothing of the image. And so visually also for this alpha, the image looks kind of right, that it preserves all the features that I'm looking at. Okay, so this is the idea.
Sir, can you explain a little more how does P minus mean of P gives an estimate of noise?
Yeah, so I'm not taking P minus mean of P over the whole image because the whole image has some structure, okay? But I'm taking these pixels along this red line where I see that more or less things are flat, okay? So the point is, if you think about a situation where you have a plain beam of light falling on the camera, okay? And so there is no structure in that. And I take multiple pictures, all right? Or I take one picture and I know that the beam is supposed to be constant, but I'm getting, but if you plot across a line in a picture like that, it's not going to give you, the readout from camera is not going to be constant. There will be some fluctuations around some mean, okay? And so whatever those fluctuations are, those are the meaning noise fluctuations in your readout process, okay? So that includes, any photon noise and also the hardware noise of the electronics, the readout part, the detection part, all of that. Because, once you have that you have a reasonably constant beam of light falling on the camera and one exposure is not actually giving you an output image where all the pixels are same. So whatever is the fluctuation in the pixels, you have to attribute to the noise in the system, okay? And so that gives me the estimate of what is the noise. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So meaning I'm giving you these, yes.
Sir, how are we getting the G drive for these images? I'm sorry.
No. Meaning what I'm going to do is if I fix the alpha, So suppose look at equation 63. Okay.
Yeah.
If I have a fixed value of alpha, I have a fixed problem, whose minimum I want to find.
Okay.
So G try will be, for that C of G, I will keep reducing C of G and by line search or whatever, and then I will get one solution. So if I picked alpha equal to 1, then after a number of iterations, so here in this problem about 20 or 30 iterations are sufficient. But at the end of it, I get the solution that is shown for alpha equal to 1, which is kind of a converged solution, that if I try to do C of G reduction, then maybe the solution is not changing much. Okay, so it is a stable solution. But if I try for another value of alpha, now my cost function has actually changed. So the minimum of that cost function will be somewhere else. Okay, and I will get another image as a solution.
So
if
for
I
a
use,
okay, sorry.
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so for a problem, we are also trying to estimate alpha alongside finding an appropriate, initial guess, so that we reach the,
Yes.
the minimum
So
more closer, faster.
The problem is, the point is that the choice of alpha is to some extent empirical and depends on what the application is. See, for a given alpha, the problem is perfectly fine mathematical. That I have been given a cost function, I want to reduce the cost function. Okay, but I might end up choosing a wrong alpha. So maybe I chose alpha equal to 100, and somebody is going to use these images for analysis of moon surface, and I give it to them, and they will say, well, this is not a good image. I think you have done something artificial to it. Or maybe it's a doctor who is trying to diagnose something out of an image, and from your mathematics standpoint, for one value of alpha, you have done everything perfect and you have an image. But the user might think that, well, there is something artificial in that image, and so I think that image is not very good. And I don't want to, if I want to use this image for doing diagnosis of somebody, then I might say that, well, I don't really like this image, and I'm not going to trust what you have given. Your algorithm may be great mathematically, but what it is giving me, it looks a little bit artificial. So practically, when you put such algorithms on the system, you need to have, a way to choose alpha either completely in an automated way, or you need a handle to tune the alpha so that you can get a family of solutions. And so there is a lot of work in this area, meaning I have also spent some time doing work at G. I will show you some results later, but the point is, if you can make this choice of alpha kind of completely automated, then that's actually very nice, because in an application, sometimes you don't want to actually. So for example, if it's a doctor, you want to give him or her only one job. Okay, so the doctor only should get an image, and from there the doctor should diagnose. If you give the doctor two jobs, that you select which looks like a good image and then diagnose it, then the doctor may not like it. Okay, so these are some of the practical aspects of doing the problem this way. But the point is that certainly that if you show the noisy image versus the alpha equal to 25 image, then in most cases the user might say that, well, I like this image more for the purpose of my whatever application is there downstream. Okay, and so the point is in
subjective, but other than that, we can come up with some search algorithm like binary or things like that for finding the appropriate alpha to go ahead with.
Yeah. Meaning the point is, now that I have explained you how I select alpha, right, based on the noise in the system, then I can make an algorithm which selects an alpha.
Okay.
Hello, excuse me,
Yeah.
sir. So as you have in the flat region, as
Yes.
you have estimated noise to be p minus mean of p,
Yes.
if we go to a region not so flat region, not flat region, how do we estimate noise? Is this the same or different?
No, then there will be some structure in the function itself, isn't it?
Sir.
So suppose I go into the crater.
Yes.
I really don't have a ground truth, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So in that case, that is why I did not use that kind of structure,
Yes,
because
sir.
flat region is, at least I know that there is no ground truth essentially. It's supposed to be nearly flat. But if there is
Yes.
a structure, then the problem will become more complicated. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Meaning these are just practical ways in which you can handle situations in real life. Suppose I'm given this noisy image and I have to denoise it. I don't know much about what the hardware was. Then I still have to do something, and this could be a workaround. That okay.
Okay, sir.
But you see that along the red line, if I computed the norm in the noise divided by norm in the pixel values itself along that line, you can see that the norm is there about same as what error I'm getting for alpha equal to 25, and
Yes, sir.
so that gives me a confidence that whatever I have is reasonable. In fact, this way of selecting alpha has a name in inverse problems literature. It is called as the Morozov discrepancy principle. But meaning I can give a reference to that. Its original paper is in Russian. It was written several decades ago. But meaning, if you want to get into that, there is always a window. You can explore these topics as much as you want. And we are also in my lab, we have algorithms now where they are kind of independent of any choice of alpha. So you kind of progress the solution in a way where there is no alpha required. And but, these things are in the research mode. So while we have published something, we are still working on these things. And there are many people who are working in this type of problems where, if you really want to take it out into a product, for example, then you have to worry and make these kind of things, more robust and more automated in some ways. But right now, when we are learning this, I don't want to get into automation of everything. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Excuse me, sir. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, it could be possible, suppose I have an image which has
Yes.
very fine structures. For example, suppose what we are considering as noise in this particular image, suppose they were important features for my application.
Yes.
In that case, what could be the approach for having an estimate of alpha?
Yeah, so now it's actually two questions. Number one is if it is very fine features, maybe total variation is not the right penalty. Okay, first of all, because total variation, the way it is acting, see, if you want a solution where there are fine features, then would you put total variation as a penalty? Maybe not. I have to get into some other penalties. But the choice of alpha, based on this error estimate, that can still work. Meaning, but if you have a problem like that, I probably wouldn't choose total variation as the penalty. Okay. Now, so I can choose other penalties. For example, there are penalties in using wavelet basis, or there are penalties which try to look for structure in the image, try to preserve structure. But all of them will have some aspect of having the gradient in the penalty function. So right now I'm just focusing on TV because it's very simple to use. But at some point, later in the class, I will also try to show what is the effect of TV versus some other penalty function. So there is a lot of literature and choices of penalty functions that have been made in the literature. So people choose things that are appropriate for their application. Okay, so if you have a structure like that noise that you're expecting in the image, then probably it's not the question of what alpha to choose, but it's a question of whether TV is the right penalty in the first place. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
And then secondly, if you have noise in the problem as well as a structure of the same size as noise, then the problem is a lot more complicated, I think. Okay. So whether any penalty function will be able to remove that. But suppose, I have a structure of the size of one of these small craters in the image. Maybe I can, or some periodic structure, photonic crystal or something like that, where there is some structure, but it is not at 1 pixel level, but at a few pixel levels, then you can probably still, maybe still TV may not be the right choice. We will have to modify the choice of the cost function. Okay. All right. Is there any other question?
Sir, I had a question regarding the assignment.
Yeah.
Sir, so after doing the processing on the image that turns out has a kind of ripple pattern around the edges.
Yeah,
so,
that is right.
What I'm not able to understand.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So have you looked at the intensity of the image, or you have looked at just the magnitude of meaning?
Sir, I've done like the square of the image, so intensity.
Okay. So do you see any features there or no features?
So the original image is kind of being able to make out, but a lot of ripples are kind of coming out from the image as well.
Ripples will be there because of the aperture. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So maybe if you want, you can, meaning away from the ripples, you can look. Or if the ripples are interfering too much, then maybe you can try to increase the size of the aperture. See what.
Okay, sir. So if we increase the size of the aperture, the edges are becoming pretty clear.
Yeah. So that is meaning it's essentially the diffraction effect. But what I want to say is in the initial picture, if you look at the intensity, since this is a phase object, the intensity will be constant. Okay.
Yes, sir.
But once you propagate a little bit, I want you to see what the intensity looks like.
Okay, sir.
If any of the features do appear, you can try to look for it.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, in step size, why we are taking norm of del function? Means what if we don't take the norm of that? Means what will be the effect on optimization of TV picture?
Are you talking about this slide?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Sir, yes, norm of del
Norm
C.
of tau
del
times.
Yes,
so
yes, sir.
it is norm of tau times the del GC, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So why I'm taking both of them is because, so suppose I have found a tau for which G tri has now become Gn plus 1. Okay.
Yes.
So then I will have Gn plus 1 is equal to Gn minus whatever there is, tau times the gradient. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So then I'm saying that if I look at what is the change in successive iterations, so Gn plus 1 minus Gn,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the norm of that? Norm means, you have, it's like RMS, isn't it? So the norm of Gn plus 1 minus Gn is the change in the solution, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Because of my update step.
Yes.
And essentially what I'm saying is look at the norm. This norm is essentially same as norm of tau times the gradient, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So if you divide this norm by the norm of the current solution itself, which is Gn,
Yes, sir.
then if this relative change in the solution in norm due to one update step, if it has gone below some threshold, then I can say that, okay, I'm essentially converged for all practical purposes. Is that okay?
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we have a class tomorrow as well.
Yes.
So we'll meet tomorrow. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Same
Okay,
time.
sir.
Tomorrow I think is a Friday.
Yes, sir.
All right.